Is there any public input? Mr. Moore, come to the mic. Identify yourself.
Hello, William Moore, 1835 Smith Street. I had a much larger set of notes here, and I'm going to try to keep it brief because I got to get home to my wife, who's hungry, and she gets quite cranky when I don't feed her. This past Saturday, we had a historic vote on the Bristol Plymouth school project. And I'm here to ask this board for three things. One, I would like an apology. Two, I would like to ask you guys to do some sort of mitigation. And three, I'm looking for a promise that this sort of thing's not going to happen in the future. Selectman Zografos posted on his Facebook page what I consider to be a piece of BP propaganda, and that's fine.
I would prefer that we not get into political conversation, quite frankly.
That's exactly what I was just going to say.
Thank you.
That I don't want. We're not going to relitigate that. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, he put it in a response to a flyer that we sent around town, calling it inaccurate to begin with, which is false, calling me a liar, I believe, saying it was negative, which it was not. It was negative in the respect that we wanted to say no, but it was not negative. Then the things that most concern me is the phrase that he used was dark money and anonymous. Well, first of all, I'm sure you are aware. Have you not seen me at this podium before discussing this subject in great detail?
Are you asking me?
I am asking you.
Well, yes, I have.
You have.
But I did see the flyer. I didn't see your name on it.
That is correct. But you are quite aware of the group of citizens within this town that were promoting
obviously, a majority of the
voters.
A
majority of the people of this town. And calling it dark money, I can say, looking around this room, I'd say about half the people in this room put in money. There was no dark money. There was nothing sinister. But yet, that's what it was called. Anonymous. We're not anonymous. I'm here. I've given interviews with...
We're not going to belabor this, but I'm not going to speak for Dr. Z. But the flyer that I saw had no name, no signature on it at all. So I don't know who sent it. You probably did contribute to it. I'm not saying you did or you didn't, but there was no name on it, or any group that it came from. Obviously, it was people who were opposed to the BP plan.
We on there was what we had, the hashtag No to BP, which turned to a Facebook page, which we have communicated on. I've discussed with the Taunton Gazette, identified myself. You know, yes, we were all involved. It was a group of a grassroots organization that came together to fight this project for the better of this town because we care about this town. And I simply do not like when we use phrases such as dark money and anonymous and sounding sinister. And then in addition to that, there were people that posted responses. And when Mr. Zografos did not like the response, he blocked them and deleted it. I don't think that's right. I think that's unethical.
I get it. We have an election coming up. This sounds like a campaign, and I don't think the public needs to hear this. You want to post anything you want on social media or whatever, that's your business.
The problem is, sir, when we post something on social media, he deletes it.
The voters in Dighton voted against BP. The majority of the people in the district voted in favor of it. Not by much, but in favor of it. Now we have to deal with that. But that's what happened Saturday. And
well, if I may move on to my second point, which is mitigation. I would like to ask all of you to do everything in your power that you see that 2/3 of the citizens of this town do not want this project.
No, I saw 2/3 of the voters that came.
Yes.
Not 2/3. In fact, it was about 10% of the population, not the eligible voters, but the population that actually came out and voted. But
I'm making the presumption that that's a statistical sampling. But certainly a large 2/3 of the voters said no.
The voters that came out were opposed to it.
And I would ask that this board do everything in your power to try to mitigate the costs of this project. We simply can't afford it. As we put out in the mailer, we simply can't afford it. And I'd like to ask you guys to do that. Lastly, I would like to ask about notice. It's come to my attention that some of the board members here have known about this project for years. We have only heard about this, myself and others, I think it was November of last year. And the original date was we were supposed to have a vote in January, a couple months. We had no time. Luckily, the mayor of Taunton bought us a little time so we could mount a defense against it. But I'd like to know, I guess my final question would be, why is it that certain members of this board have known for years and the citizens of Dighton have not?
Well, I can tell you, speaking for myself, but I won't speak for the rest of the board, I found out about it the same time you found out about it. I did not know about it prior. And what I should have done, I should have gone to some of the BP meetings, because they've been meeting apparently for 3 years on this, and I was just caught up on it. You're saying November, it was probably November when I heard it, and we brought it in. Fortunately, we were able to have the, town administrator sent a letter to ask for a delay in the election, and it was postponed to March, which gave us a little bit more time, obviously. But I can honestly tell you, I found out about it probably when you found out about it. So.
Well, I honestly believe that if we had had more time, and we could have reached more people, because some of if you saw the turnouts in the other towns were abysmal. I mean, I think like 400 or 500 people showed up in Bridgewater or something like that.
Well, what we did in this town, if you remember, we had a public hearing. We let BP come in and explain the whole project, and we had, I think you spoke, and and a couple of other people spoke, either for or against it. But we did want the public to know, the residents to know what the options were. So we did all we can, the town of Dighton. I can't speak for other towns. I wouldn't tell them how to vote on their, on the project, but.
Well, I'm not sure what else to say, other than I think a couple of months' notice on a $300 million project is not acceptable. But I don't want to argue about it, but thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you want me to stay or go?
You have a question for him?
No, I just.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
In response to the issue of when this town knew about the Bristol Plymouth project, when I first heard about what I'm going to disclose, I was shocked and somewhat heartbroken. Because in September of 2019, they had their first meeting with town officials. 2 selectmen attended, town administrator attended, and the head of FinCom attended. That was in September of 2019. In 2020, they had 2 meetings. One in September with one member of the Board of Selectmen, not a current member, attended, and town administrator. And in January of 2020, the town administrator attended. In January of 2021, Bristol Plymouth reached out to the town of Dighton, and no one attended from the town of Dighton. The town administrator, nor members of the Board of Selectmen.
Just want to make it clear that it's not our current town administrator.
Correct. It wasn't. I'm trying not to name names. I'm not trying to make this a big political or personal issue. But I will say this. This town didn't do due diligence on this project. They weren't transparent, and it put us in a very difficult situation because the public wasn't informed. And it has, in some sense, split the town. And what my biggest fear was, and why I contributed money, which I don't consider dark money, and why I spoke out against the project, is that those same people who voted no on that project are going to come back when we have a debt exclusion and vote no on a debt exclusion. And then we are going to have a mess, because now we're going to have to look at cutting programs because the money's got to come from somewhere. Thank you.
Is there any other public input?
Mr. Chairman?
Mrs. Gulak?
I'm the selectman, or one of the selectmen that's being referenced. And I don't know how early I was involved, but I had been invited to meetings at BP. They were breakfast meetings. And at that time, the project was replace the roof, remove the facade that contains asbestos, and make other renovations and possible additions. That was the same information at the next meeting. And by the way, every time I went to one of those meetings, I came back to the Board of Selectmen and said, I attended a meeting at BP, this is what's happening. I can tell you at one of those meetings, there was a representative or representatives from the Department of Ed and from the section, the building, used to be School Building Assistance Bureau. And they talked numbers. At the time, the number was above 50%. When COVID came, and also when we hired a town administrator, I know I didn't get invited to meetings again, so I assume they were covered. When COVID came, I had talked to the superintendent at a couple of times, emails basically, and said, are we going to have any more meetings? And he said, yes. I was never invited to those again. But I can tell you, this Board of Selectmen was represented. I was one of the selectmen, and whenever I went to a meeting, I came back and said, this is what's happening. I did not know it was a brand-new building until that meeting was held, and I'm sitting at home saying, what are they talking about? This isn't what had been the proposal. My personal opinion was, and I voted no simply because, number one, the cost. Number two, I think it's insulting, the percentage they offered. I think that building, even as expensive as it was, to not get at least 50% is insulting. We are not the affluent suburban communities of Boston. This part of the state is just not boomtown. I look at projects in Attleboro, a new Durfee High School, the new Diamond, okay? And I'm thinking, I'm looking at Aggie. That one was a little over 50%. And so I'm looking at this saying, what happened with this one? But I just want you to know, folks, when they were having meetings and when I knew about them, I did attend and I did report. So for the selectmen that were on the board with me at the time, there were reports. What ended up is not what was presented when I did attend the meetings. So there was no hiding of anything. I reported exactly what happened. So I was as surprised as all of you when that project was finally announced, and it was like, wow. Thank you.